Okay. All right, we ready? Okay. First question, and again, these are repeats probably of the ones from the previous one, but how would you describe your leadership style, and how did you develop your leadership style over the years?
Yeah, so again, I had this before, but I'll answer it slightly backwards. I think all of us, I think we develop your leadership styles or the way you do things from past experiences, people that you've worked with or worked under, other leaders in your life. And so I think different people shape you. And for me personally, especially, kind of speak more from coaches that I've had, those have been my bosses essentially, and just ask parts that I kind of gleaned from each person, each leader, things that I liked, things that I didn't like. And so, for me, it kind of started with Carney. I mean, that's who I played for here. And so as a young adult, 18 years old, there's things, put under him, his aspects of how he coached and how he led, that I held on to. But I think more along the lines of professionally, I think two managers, I had the opportunity to play for two Hall of Fame managers, one in Oakland, Tony La Russa, and then in New York, Joe Torre. And both of those guys were very different in how they went about things. Both were very successful, but very different. Tony was players, especially young players, here to be seen and not to be heard. He didn't really have a voice. Communication was non-existent. For example, the first year out of spring training that I made the big league roster, I was never actually told that I made the big league roster. Never shook my hand, congratulations, you're in the big leagues. Spring training ended and they didn't tell me I was going to AAA, so I guess I'm going to the big leagues. And so I didn't have apartments set, anything like that, because I really didn't know. So fast forward to later that year, playoff rosters were being developed. Set. We're in the last week of the season, and traveling secretary is going to. He's asking each of us playoff tickets, all those type of things. Playoffs are going to start in Toronto, and I'm trying to set plane flights and buy, playoff tickets, all these type of things. In the second to last game of the year, he says, "Come pick up your tickets, everybody." So I went into the office, and he kind of gave me this look. And I go, "I'm not on the roster, am I?" And he goes, "No, somebody should have told you." So I found out from the traveling secretary that I didn't make the playoff roster. So at that point, for me, that was never going to be how I treated somebody. A lack of communication was never going to be a part of how I led, how I treated people. I was always going to be somebody that was, and I had the conversation with him at the time. I said, "You could have been honest with me. I get it. I understand the decision. I'm a grown man, but I have family. There's things here that you've impacted me, flights and all these type of things. Just knowing would have been really helpful." So I felt like I would never act in that way. That would not be my style of leading. It's to just people are to be seen and not to be heard. Playing for Joe Torre was a completely different experience. In New York, and the kind of the pressure cooker out there, how he treated people, completely different person. For me, I had an experience in my second year in New York. My dad died during the season, so he was sick with cancer the year before and was sick throughout the whole season and then passed away during the season. And what Joe allowed me to do, he allowed me at one point to go home for 2 days before my dad passed away so I could actually say goodbye to him. And so just allowing me to do something like that. And then, of course, after he passed away, to go back to the funeral and spend a couple days. I came in, I told him, in that particular instance, I said, "I'll sit with the team for 2 or 3 more days and head over to the funeral and come back." And I got to the park the next day, I'm like, "What are you doing here?" I'm like, "This is crazy. Your dad just passed away, you need to be there." And so I walked into the office and kind of just hit him with it. I said, "I'm sorry, I told you I'd be here, but I got to go home." And he got up and hugged me and said, "I'll see you when I see you." So for me, that was another instance for me. I said, that's how I want to treat people. That's how I want to lead. So I say all that because it does impact, I guess, in terms of how I see leadership, people that I work with, we're a team. So I feel like I'm a lead by example. I would never ask somebody to do something something that I'm not willing to do myself. Same way as a coach and a player, I'm not gonna tell a player I want you to act a certain way or I want you to do a certain thing that I'm not willing to do myself. My door is gonna be open. It's gonna be based on honesty. It'll be conversations. I think, having an honest conversation, a personal relationship with each person. That's, again, one thing Joe was so good at, was getting to know people personally, knowing who they were, what made them tick, and how to help make them successful. So, if you're going to categorize, and I say all this, but if you're going to use words to categorize, I guess, my type of leadership, I feel collaborative. This is not a dictatorship, and I'm not a micromanager. Guys are going to be, you guys will have the ability to run your programs and be empowered, but I do think another word, I guess, that if you're going to use words is transformational. I love to see people get it. I love to see people grow. I see the role of AD is to empower you guys, to inspire you guys, and give you guys the support and whatever help you need to be as successful as possible. So, kind of a long-winded answer, but I think those would be the aspects of how
Any clarifying questions? Okay, I'm going to keep asking. The last group was very hesitant to ask clarifying questions, but I'm just letting you know I'm going to keep asking. So, okay. Describe your approach to balancing the need to win with the need to fundraise and the need to be compliant. Tell us about a time when you tried to balance these three priorities but were not successful and something didn't happen as it should. What happened and how did you handle it and what would you do differently the next time? That's all 8 questions.
Yeah.
Question 2. So
there's a lot in there. Obviously, some of that suggests, a portion of that question suggests maybe that possible would be, an AD position before, having to deal with something specifically. But I would say that I do believe that there's no question we should be able to balance all 3. We should be able to balance winning with compliance and the need to fundraise. I think we're going to win. We want to win, but we don't want to win at all costs, right? In other words, our program should run with integrity. We should do the right things for the right reasons. Ultimately, there's winning's a portion of it. There's a connection for sure between winning and fundraising. There's no doubt about people want to connect to successful programs. When the program's successful, when the teams are winning, people are excited about it. The stands get fuller. And people are excited. They want to connect to it. So there's no question. Success should define, who we are as an athletic program. But let's define success. Let's define what success is. Number one, everybody in athletics gets the same opportunity. Every coach, every player gets the same opportunity. That's just a core value of the athletic program, that we're going to operate in compliance, that everybody gets the same opportunity. There should be no tiers or layers in terms of teams, because every student athlete should get that same ability, opportunity to grow. Your jobs as coaches, to me it's an exciting job. It's the thing that I loved about coaching too, was seeing the light bulb click for our players. And they get it. And it might be something sports related, or it might be something interpersonal, or it might be like they finally figured out in the classroom. They finally figured out study habits. They finally figured out how to manage their time. They finally figured out how to do these things that are going to make them successful, beyond coaching. And so, can we balance them? Sure. Fundraising, no question. We're going to need to fundraise. We talk about budgets, and I know this is a big topic. Rightly so. If the school's going to offer a program, they should fund the needs of the program, right? We should have those our needs program met. But fundraising is going to play a part of this thing. It's going to play a part. When we start talking about some of the other wants that we have, some of the things that are going to drive our programs forward, fundraising is going to play a part of that. But in terms of, like I said, I know it's a long question and I'm kind of spinning different places, but we absolutely have to balance those things. We have to balance doing it the right way. Our programs being, run with integrity, but we can. We can win doing it that way, and we can build those connections and with our alumni and former players in terms of fundraising to get them excited about our program.
Clarifying questions? Okay. What role do you see cheer and dance playing in athletics? And tell us how you have supported these programs in the past.
Yeah, cheer and dance, I think that's one of the been, for me, just a little bit somewhat on the outside, if you want to call it that, but on campus and around, it's been a fun thing to see. It's been the development of it, the rosters are healthy, turnout is good, and to see what they're adding to, athletics. And so I see the importance of it, I understand the importance of cheer and dance. In terms of how I treat it, it's every program in athletics gets the same treatment. Every program has equal importance. And so the processing in terms of, if I have the ability to do this job, that, priority number one would be meeting with every coach, meeting with every head coach and talking about the program, talking about needs, talking about what we need, what we have, what we don't have, what we do well, all those different things, priorities, all these things. Well, that extends certainly to dance and cheer. It's a program, under our umbrella, so it all gets the same treatment. So,
Right.
yeah.
Clarifying questions? Okay. Describe your approach to fiscal responsibility and accountability. How do you ensure that each program operates within their means, and what does accountability look like in your leadership style?
Yeah, I think, I understand probably some of this question's coming from too, that there's been some challenges in that area, and budgets are a challenge. There's no question about it. I had it when I was coaching here, you guys have it now. I think there's two aspects of it. These are conversations that will continue to happen. We had them this morning with the DPs and Becky and how we budget. I said this in our last round, but I think zero-based budgeting is important. We can get back to that. I think that's important because it allows, and it's time consuming. I did it when I was coaching here, but it allows to go through and with each program, with each budget, be able to say, here's our needs, here's our operational costs, which should be funded. The operational costs should be funded. So once we know those costs, we can set a budget for that. Well, now in terms of accountability, it's a very straightforward, as coaches, we have to be accountable to our budgets, plain and simple. This is what we've been given. This is the money. It's not a gray. It's a black line. It's not a gray fuzzy area. And so that starts with me. That starts with us. As we start a relationship together with these honest kind of conversations that say, okay, we've talked through your program. Here's what we have. This is where we have to stay. Now the conversations within that budget where getting back to the fundraising piece of this thing as well is that's going to be important for us for a while here, especially in the short term. It's going to be important for us because we're short all over campus, and so we can't conjure up money where money doesn't exist. And so there's going to be a place where yes, the fundraising piece of this thing is going to help and get programs to some of those wants that they have as well as the needs. But I think zero basing will certainly help with accountability. But then it's just us being in conversations where there's clear expectations from the beginning and a process in place then to follow and to be accountable for those expectations.
I have a follow-up question. As a first-year coach, I'm obviously learning a lot. This is the first time I've had to do a budget. So this whole idea of a zero-based budget. So when I put together my budget, we talked about needs and wants, and I need $15,000 for food. Okay, but my budget gives me 10.
I think this is where it's a time-consuming thing, but it's a question. There's no question those things. I guess I would break it down. I'm trying to answer your question maybe with an answer, or with another question, because I'd have to break that question down a little bit, for example, and say, okay, $15,000 for food, is that coming in all in conference scheduling? Is it coming without a conference scheduling? There's places for that. So for example, and again, this goes back to every program being slightly different in terms of where they're at in their needs. When I was coaching here, we were at a place where we were pushing for the postseason pretty much every year, and I learned after the first year that it was really important for us in regional rankings to play all Division III games. okay? So I chose to travel once and sometimes twice a year to go find those games because we couldn't get them here in the area. Now, our budget said, for games within the Northwest, we were gonna cover those games, but if you choose to travel, then that's a law. That's something that I chose to do, so that came under my fundraising aspect, and the food from that came under my fundraising part of it as well. Slightly different right now. For example, Dan over in the baseball program, they're still building this thing up. They're choosing to play more games local. They're for them playing 40 Division III games isn't quite as important right now. So they're playing midweek games because he wants more pitchers thrown in the middle of the week, and so we're playing NAI schools and different things like that. So every conversation is slightly different. I do think that we do have to understand, again, there's only, when it comes to our numbers, our budget, there is going to be a cap. There's going to be a place, and so we have decisions. Every coach has a decision to make, and we have decisions to make together based on each program in that situation. Football doesn't have somebody to play, right? I mean, in terms of like if you want a Division III game, nobody wants to play, a certain team. Others have to go travel to play because that's where the games are. So that's not a want, that's a need. So anyway, every program is different in terms of how they schedule, what they need, and so I think we just have to look at those individually.
To follow up, Scott, because I remember dealing with zero sum with money before, and if we get a situation where, let's say it is like conference schedule, and we're, leaving the day of the game, and we're doing the sack lunch, and we're doing all that, and just say, food is 10 that we budget for, but it's actually 50. That would be a question that I would have. So these are needs that are surgical needs. Like we've gone through with a fine-tooth comb with every single game.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, this is what we have to do.
Yeah.
And we're short $5,000 or whatever that number is. How do we still have to do the fundraising for the basic?
That's my job too, is to go to bat too for those situations. Like in spring sports, for example, rain's going to happen. And if you happen to be the team on the road, golf, whatever, weather happens. And so there were times where we're sitting up in Tacoma for another night. That wasn't in the budget, right? Now, that's the conversation. That's where the AD has to come back and say, listen, this is out of their control. Like this is, now things that I had to do. I mean, this is where I guess creativity comes into play a little bit. Our per diem at the time when I was coaching was small, right? And I'm like, how are we going to feed these guys 3 meals a day? Well, a small thing we did is we made sure every hotel that we stayed at had breakfast. Right, and so we just chose hotels that had breakfast. They didn't have to spend money for their breakfast. We got them to a grocery store on the way to the game, so they didn't have to do a restaurant thing. They could find their food, and so we would find ways to support them and do that. So I think that's where, but the role of the AD is to go to bat for you guys when you don't feel your needs are being met. That's where I have to go to bat and say, okay, listen, we need to understand this may be budgeted, or this ended up being greater than we thought. That this need was greater, but it's not a want. This had to happen. So they shouldn't be penalized for having to stay in Tacoma another night because they got rained out.
I would even say kind of a question, but right now our per diem per student athlete for spending the night at a place is $40. I don't know where you guys are getting a hotel for $80 a night.
Right.
But that's what's budgeted, and it's the NCAA passed a rule, and maybe on a men's team you don't see this side of it, but and maybe you do, so I'm not speaking, but I just know I'll speak for my own team, but they're well aware of that rule, right? So they know that they're not sharing a bed with someone. So it's you're not getting a hotel room in Tacoma, you're not getting a hotel room in Spokane for $80 a night. You're not even staying at a Motel 8 for $80 a night, right? And it's also I wouldn't feel comfortable being in Spokane with 20 females. I moved till 8, and I'd like to say I can handle myself a little bit, but, so it's like, those things to me are also, I think, a concern on the budget, where it's just like, it is so out of date in terms of cost of things, like cost of food, cost of living,
Yep.
and I think that's kind of maybe a little bit of, you know, a pattern with like what we're dealing with, at Linfield, but it's like, that stuff is what's really difficult, because like, the whole university faces that, but it's like, well, these aren't, this isn't like a choice, right? Like, so that's where it gets a little bit where it's like, okay, so those needs that you need to meet, and like, I personally feel like I do a really good job of like, I don't really think I purchase a lot of wants, to be fair, but that budget is still tight. It's still not sustainable.
Yeah.
Um,
And those
yeah.
are the conversations, honestly, like, okay, it is, you're 100% right, we can't get a hotel for $80 anymore, not one that we want to stay in. So that's a policy, or that's a number that we need to talk about.
Like, I stayed in Idaho, these was $300 and something a night
Right.
in
Yeah, and
Spokane.
post-COVID and the last few years, inflation, things like that, like you said, you know, some places you're spending $17, I've seen, for a Big Mac now, or something like that, right? So, I mean, you try to feed kids. So those are real questions,
Yeah.
and those are real world kind of, when it comes to budget, right, that's not filling the need.
And
so
yeah,
those are-
I think it's
those
just
are-
difficult because we mentioned fundraising, but it's like, you know, newer programs with newer coaches that don't have those connections to alumni. We're not getting the same fundraising as other programs are, and that's fine because we're not going to, numbers are different, right? Like, so like we get creative, but that's where it gets a little dicey when we talk about tapping into fundraisers for things, right? Because it's like, you know, the fundraising account isn't gonna be as deep as I'd like it to be, and I could be putting in just as much work, maybe even more, because I have to.
Okay, any other clarifying questions? Okay. How do you stay abreast of all the goings-on in each program? What techniques and strategies do you use to ensure that you are aware of student, coach, or program issues when you can only be in one place at a time? Unless you have secret abilities, please share with us.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question, it's a busy job. I think it starts with two places. Number one, I kind of mentioned already, it's personal contact, it's personal relationship. It's being able to meet individually with coaches and hear what's going on, and making that, it's just a part of the schedule, part of the AD's schedule, in my opinion, is making sure there's time to meet with each coach individually. It might be a 10-minute check-in, it might turn into something more based on, but it starts with, we're not operating on separate islands, right? You should never feel like you're stuck on an island by yourself and you're not getting the same attention that so-and-so is getting. We are one team under the umbrella of athletics, under the umbrella of Linfield University, right? And so nobody should feel like they're out on an island somewhere. But secondly, too, is I think one of the important pieces and one of the biggest challenges the new AD is going to have coming in is replacing that. Okay, and restructuring upstairs. I'll use the word upstairs, but restructuring to put people in positions that they thrive in, that they're good at, that is a strength. And so for me, in terms to be an effective AD, I have to have an effective team, and I have to rely on that team. So one of my top priorities and my biggest challenges is putting people in the right place, whatever a restructure looks like, whatever the hire of Doug looks like, and if jobs move a little bit. But what I'm saying is putting people in the place where they can do their jobs, something that, areas that they're strong at, that I don't have to micromanage, that allows me then to do what I consider some of the important, bigger picture kind of pieces of the AD job, which is connect with coaches and support coaches and connect with alumni. So fundraising, we get that support, and build, and be on top of and understand what our student athletes are dealing with, and academically, are they getting the help that they need? Are they getting the support they need? But it should all be done, you know, I think everything that we're doing should be done under the, again, I go back to what's the definition of success? What's our definition? You know, winning games, sure, there's success in winning games. Definition of success starts with A, like I said, our programs have integrity, that we're doing it the right way. That when somebody comes, we're not in the papers anymore. We're doing things the right way, right? So it starts with integrity. It starts with success also is our athletes graduate. That's what they're here for. They're here to get a degree. I mean, very few get the chance to go on and they're not going to, most of them aren't going to have a career playing the sport that they're playing here, right? So they need to graduate and then they need to learn the life skills that sports teaches us. They need to learn the life skills that allow them to be successful then, regardless of whether they get to play till they're 35. I was a lucky guy to be able to do that, but even at 35, I had a whole lot of life going on afterwards. And so regardless of how long that we play, we have to empower, we have to prepare our student athletes to be successful beyond Linfield. So to me, those are the definitions of success as well. And so, you know, so it doesn't matter what program a student athlete's in, what program they're all equally as important, because that is our goal as coaches and with the athletic program.
You talked about like replacing Doug and structure. Do you have an idea of what you would like that to look like so that you can do the job that you feel like you
Big picture I do. I don't even know, I'm not sure everybody can even answer the current structure right now. That it seems to be a little bit of a moving target right now. People have been moved into and shifted into different places, and so we're not far enough along the process for me to ask those very specific questions, but just as I've kind of nudged my way through, I know there's been a lot of shifting and things like that. I'm not going to pretend to sit here and say I know Doug's job. I don't know all the aspects of Doug's job, but I will. You know, if I'm the AD, I will. And, you know, we're going to sit down. I mean, Doug he's said he's going to stick around and be a part of the onboarding. Like I said, that's the biggest piece. So that's what I'll learn. And I know what my strengths are, and I know what my weaknesses are. And so I will certainly look for, you know, people that we complement each other, that allow me to do what I think I'm good at, and allow them to do what they're good at as well. But yeah, it's kind of hard to know. Because there's been a little bit of a moving target with some of the shifts and roles.
have blank canvas.
There you go.
Clarifying questions? Okay. What challenges have you observed in athletics departments in regard to gender equity? Tell us about a time when you had to address gender equity within athletics. What happened? How did you handle it? And what would you do differently next?
Yeah, I think, you know, I've learned a couple of personal experiences that I've learned from kind of maybe on the other side of things a little bit is I think one of the challenges we have when it comes to, you know, making sure all of our programs and all of our athletes are supported equally, right? Is when you have somebody that has a heart and has a passion to help somebody, right? And somewhere specific, right? You mentioned, you know, again, you know, some programs are going to have a whole lot of former alumni that are involved in all that, and developing programs aren't going to have that same type of number. But when you have somebody that's passionate about giving to something, I've been on the other side of it before, where I've been like, oh, I would love to do this, and an attempt was made to redirect that. And that didn't sit well with me. Like, it didn't sit well, like, wait a second, I want to help, and you're telling me you don't want my help here, but you sure want it over here. I don't like the idea of trying to redirect somebody, but at the same time, I've learned that there's a bigger picture in play too. So one example that I would use was back when I was playing, and we wanted to put lights on the baseball field. And, you know, so Carney and I were talking about lights. He goes, understand, it's lights for the baseball field and the softball field. And, you know, and I'm like, on the baseball player, I want to give lights to the baseball. You know, we want to do the baseball field. He goes, well, they need to come in together. And so that was kind of my first kind of, you know, kind of introduction to like, hey, listen, we need to make sure that things are happening equally on campus. And so for me, it's the idea of like, okay, we want to encourage people that want to get to where they want to get, but we also have to kind of keep, there is a bigger picture in mind. There's more to it than that. This year, you know, and I was a little bit guilty of that this year too. You know, when we added the little room on the end of the batting cage, that was a response to me. That was my response to hearing like the baseball team can't get in the weight room. Like they can't get in the weight room in any kind of reasonable time to work out. And we all know, every coach knows the struggle in there. And I'm like, well, crap, this is so easy. Let's just stick a little space back here, and you guys can use it for what you want or whatever. And I'm just trying to, and you got somebody, a former player that wants to do it, and you're like, you just want to like just get it done. And you're like, whoa, it's just not that easy. Like you have to slow down a little bit. And so for me, that I think that's the challenge too a little bit is when you see something you want to go, it's like, okay, no, we need to slow down a little bit and understand there's a bigger picture in play, and everybody needs to be served.
Clarifying questions? Okay. Describe your approach to equitably managing different sports programs with different sizes of teams, different needs, and different structures.
I think we hit on some of that stuff a little bit. You know, every program is unique. Every program has different, you know, needs. And so when in terms of, you know, in terms of compliance, it's not going to be a dollar for dollar type of an equal distribution like that or proportionality. Football has different needs than soccer does. You know, so there's going to be a different cost to helmets and shoulder pads versus shin guards in soccer. Every sport is unique and different, and so you can't treat every sport with a blanket kind of a policy that says this is what you get for, you know, this is what you get for basketballs, and this is what you get. We can't look at it that way. Again, I think we have to break it down. I think there can and there needs to be some policy when we go back to the accountability that says, okay, in certain areas, this is our food per diem, and you know, everybody that's uniform. That's the same. There's certain aspects within the budget that are uniform from program to program, but every program has to be truly different based on who they are and their own unique schedule that they play.
Clarifying questions? Last question, and then we'll turn it over to you for questions. What is your ideal environment in the athletics department, and how would you set the tone to align with that ideal? What steps would you take to address people who don't appreciate your approach, and how would you bridge that gap?
Well, I think the ideal environment, number one, and I know, well, my ideal environment is number one, everybody feels valued, everybody feels heard, everybody feels a part of the team. Again, that we're not feeling like we're not on an island somewhere. I hope, for me, I think coaching, and I'm not doing it right now, but coaching, like I said, was special to me because, like I said, I love the idea of what the impact that we can have on kids. I hope we can build some enthusiasm in that there's some enthusiasm in the department, and maybe there is. I know there's been a fracture. I know there's been a fracture of communication. I know there's been a fracture in a number of different ways. And so I hope that my goal would be a place where everybody feels heard, where there's honest communication, where we can have a conversation, even a tough conversation. You're going to get an honest answer from me. We may not always agree, but at least we're having a conversation, right? That every program, again, we get back to what's defining success. Let's get excited about doing that. We are going to live with, we're never going to have enough. I think we're always going to have that. It would be great if, I tried, we didn't win the lottery. It'd been nice to have like a $500 million infusion into the school. It didn't happen. So until that happens, we're going to be living with some tough decisions and some tight budgets and things like that. But if we're operating from a place where everybody feels like, ultimately, I'll back up a little bit too. I'm a little long-winded here, but I really enjoyed my job with USA Baseball in terms of like it's similar to not being an AD, but it's overseeing multiple teams and things like that. The reason I stopped that job was I was working remotely, but I wasn't a part of the team. Like I didn't feel like I was a part that everybody's in North Carolina and I'm in Oregon. And I was kind of faced with the decision that I either move to North Carolina to keep doing this job, or I can't do this job because I can't do it well if I'm not face to face, and it's not enjoyable for me when I'm sitting on a computer up in an upstairs office at 6 in the morning and everybody's there. I say all that because you guys shouldn't feel that way here either. You guys should feel as part of an athletic team that you're not a part, that you're not as valued as everybody else. Right? And I think a lot of times value is tied straight to money. And I get it, like I'm not valued because I'm not getting paid, but this guy's getting paid. I'm not valued because the Lewis and Clark guy is making more than, we've lived, for years and years. I was part of it. We do more with less, and we pride ourselves. And there's a reason for that too. And that's a good thing. We did more with less. We all knew that we were some of the lower paid coaches in the conference and all these type of things, but we were able to win and still do it. And so that's something we can pride ourselves on. But I'd like to see us do more with more. I'd like to see us get to a place where, okay, this is the way we've done things. Okay, great, that's great. I mean, we've been successful, we've done things, but can we be some forward thinking and start to think about how can we do things better? How can we get to a place where every team is thriving, right? Every team is thriving. Can we have those conversations with each program, with each coach? What are we doing well? Okay, you guys are winning. How are you winning? What's happening over here? If you're struggling, why are you struggling? What's going on? What are some of the challenges that we're facing? How do we, raise and elevate all of our sports so every program now is in the fight? In terms of, like I said, measures of success, they're winning programs. And so that's how I envision this department. It's not a fractured department where there's a sense or a feel of haves and have-nots, where everybody's on a different playing field. And we're a team in this thing together, and that's my job, my role is to really connect and bring us all together. And I do. I use the word again. I think there should be some excitement about what we do. We should like what we're doing. Yes, we're going to have to live with some certain things. We're going to have to live with our budgets and things like that. But we should also still have a good feeling for what we do.
Clarifying questions?
In your time here earlier when you were coaching, did you feel like there was haves and have-nots? And I guess to clarify that question, I've heard that in my area over the years, and I've never necessarily seen it. I guess I would see back then too. I would see baseball players making sandwiches, Wonder Bread, and clothing look like, but between games and stuff. So it seemed to me like kind of everybody was doing that, but then I still hear that when there was haves and have-nots.
Yeah, I think I guess I was referring more to maybe like what's communicated to coaches and what's like there's certain importance placed on programs versus other programs. I didn't really feel like there was, for me, I knew we were all in the same boat. Like when I was coaching here, I mentioned this. I know it's our second go around doing all this. I mentioned before when I started, my recruiting budget was $500. I mean, I had a roster of 45 players. I had a $500 recruiting budget when I started. And I think we got it up to like $1,500 by the time I left. So I had to get really creative. Carney was up front. He goes, you're working a full-time job for part-time pay, and we don't have it in the budget to do all these kind of things. And so I don't think it was a matter of I was being treated any different. We were kind of in a lot of ways, budgetarily, things like that, we're all kind of having. But I guess what I was getting at is like I said, if we're tying value just to our budgets and just to our salaries, I think we're losing part of what we're doing here. And in that regard, everybody should feel equally as important to the program. Every program should feel equally as important to athletics. And so there should never be a sense of feeling that there's some programs that are seemingly more important or higher value than others. That's just, that will be the case. Does that make sense?
I would say too, just like maybe not necessarily a question or a statement piece, but I don't think people look at like the program, and I don't think yet there's a single one of us that are in this room that are like in it for the money, but there's such thing as cost of living, right? So I'd say like, yeah, budget, salary, there's needs, right? There's also needs for your own personal life of cost of living. So, you know, I'll tell you, maybe when you took that part-time pay for a full-time job, in Pinville's houses were about $190,000. Now you're getting a small home for about $400,000. Rent is about cheapest you can get here, $2,200. Well, anybody who knows who tries to get approved for that, maybe not some of you who are married that have dual incomes, but you're only allowed a third of your income. So if it's over a third of your income, you're a little screwed. So I think that's where concerns come in. I don't think it's necessarily where people are expecting more and not like doing it for the love of the job, right? I don't think there's a single person that's a college coach at a D3 level that does it for the money, by any means. But that's where it becomes where it's like, there are necessities in life and there's necessities for programs. And it's really hard when maybe none of it's being done, right? And that's where it gets difficult.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
All right. Any other clarifying questions on that one? Okay, Scott, questions from the group?
I don't know if I do, and we've been through this is round 2, kind of been through this process. You know, a question I asked before, I guess, I would continue to ask now. You know, it's been a couple months, you know, and I know this thing was put on hold a little bit, and, you know, kind of try to clean some things up, I guess you want to say, or whatever, I guess. So I kind of just reposed the question a little bit to everybody, like, you know, the new AD coming in, what's the priority for you guys? You know, and these would be questions obviously that would happen individually as well, but just as a staff, as a group of coaches, what are the priorities right now? What are you feeling? What do you need the next AD to do?
I think one thing, we've talked about it a lot with budgets and stuff and gray area versus red and black and all that kind of stuff. I think clarity and communication would go a long ways. I mean, we all have been operating under the same exact budget. It was 10 years ago I was given to, you know, from Carney. But then I'm told like, well, you could go over in this area if you need to because your roster size. I would crave some like, this is it. Like, this is the budget and this is what you got. Because for me, the budget's the needs. Like we talked about the hotels and stuff like that. I'd just like us to like dig deep or whatever we need to do and say, okay, this is what it really costs and this is what your budget is. And let's not go over it. And hold us accountable. It's fine with me. It's just, I think we're all really good at like, okay, we're gonna find a hotel with breakfast, we're gonna go to the grocery store, we're gonna do all these things, because that's just who we are, but a little bit more clarity on communication, I think would go a long ways.
I heard that earlier today as well, that just, you know, kind of the, whatever, the grades, the moving targets, like just let us know what we have, let's just be clear, let's be honest, you know, and I think can't be afraid of difficult conversations. You know, to say that we're all going to, it's all going to just be rainbows and sprinkles, and there's going to be some hard conversations. You know, we're going to have conversations. We're not going to like the answer. You know, that's okay. Like that's okay. But if there's clarity, there's honesty, and we're working and understanding. My hope is that we can all come in and understand that every program is different. We're all coming from different places and different situations, but all have common ground. And we have to understand we all have common ground. You want to be successful. that's the ultimate goal, is for everybody to be successful. So if we're working from that place, then we can have those honest conversations, yeah, this sucks, right? This is tough, you know, and like I said, there will be disagreements, there will be things that, you know, you won't like, and I told my players that as well. When they play, you'll get an honest answer, you may not like the answer, but you'll get an honest answer. If it's about playing time or your situation or whatever, don't ask the question if you don't want an honest answer. So I love that too, because I think as coaches, and I've been on the other side, like I said, accountability is a two-way street. I'm accountable to you guys are accountable to me. So you know, being on the other side of it, we can't just say, oh, I just want to be better. Well, tell me how you want to be better. Like, let's be specific. Let's have, you know, like I said, you want specific, you know, when it comes to budget, so we need to know where we stand. You're struggling, our program's struggling. That's not a good enough answer for me, right? Why are you struggling? Specifically, what's going on? Is it roster issues? Is it assistant coaching? What is it? What specifically are we struggling with? So now we work on it, but we want to move. I think we want to get past this place where we're just focused on what we don't have. Like truly just focused on what we don't have. Okay, what are we doing well too? I mean, there's two sides of this thing. What are we doing well? How can we better support them? Okay, yeah, here's the things that we're struggling with. But we also need to, there's some giving some needs on both sides of stuff here too. Like, yeah, there's some things that are going really well here. There's things that we are doing well. Let's not forget that. Sorry, kind of random.
Levi and then Steve, yeah.
To kind of follow up on what Kyle said, how you talked about budgets and how it's kind of been a moving target. You know, so with that at Top Hat, what role do you see Top Hat? I mean, it's just my impression of it right now is it's essentially a slush fund that has been distributed in different ways. What role do you see?
Top Cat is going to have to play a role in this for a while. I mean, there's no question about it. I mean, what I believe to be right and what's going to happen aren't necessarily going to align, you know, maybe ever right away. Like I said, when I talk about the institution being able to fund the needs of the program, I believe that includes coaching, should include coaching, all of it. Doesn't include it. Doesn't. I know Tomcat, fundraising, different places are taking care of some coaching things. At some point, I would sure love to see this college healthy enough, university healthy enough, that those have needs. There's going to be gaps. Right now there is. There's shortfalls. There's going to be gaps. I believe, for me personally, I'm okay with that. Like, I'm okay with, like, okay, listen, we're fundraising going to increase it. This podcast's going to cover some gaps. I think it needs to happen in some ways, some conversations, you know, with finances, things like that. Like, okay, here's our time frame for this, whatever. You know, a plan in place where you can cover some of those gaps. But yes, I mean, fundraising is going to be a part of this thing. And I know to sit there and say, hey, this is how the pie is going to be distributed. I don't know if I can say that, right? Because again, every program is in a different place in terms of what needs they need to be met and what their shortfalls are. But Popcast is going to play a part of that. I think when it comes to the fundraising piece of this, I see my priorities in terms of fundraising are number one, growing Popcat. Okay, because these are going to continue to grow. We need to be able to say yes when somebody comes in. This is a need right here. We need this, and we're short this right now. We need to go to it. On the baseball field, when the pads are falling off the backstop, that's only what your eye on, right? But I don't necessarily think that's still a part of our facility that probably should be handled just like painting the gym, right? Should be handled that, but should have to cover that. Well, the top has to be covered. So there's places for things like that. But I think another priority that I would like to see in terms of fundraising too is yes, we have the guys that, you know, the donors, the bigger donors. There's some disconnect right out there right now. Like if I've been doing some stuff with the stadium project, and I've been met with resistance, and usually the first question, the first response we get is, we don't know what's going on over in athletics right now. Like, they don't trust what's going on over in athletics. We've been in the paper, all these things we've been talking about, there's a disconnect. So I need to be able to connect with those guys and explain and show a vision for where athletics is going. But I also think we can be really forward-thinking too in terms of how we fundraise. I said this in our last round with you guys, that, you know, we have, Linfield we've done so many things for so long, for so well, that it's easy to fall to, this is how we've always done things. And I think we need to move past that initial reaction when it comes to ideas like fundraising. I think we can use social media better than we do. And I was explaining to the others, I'm not a social media, I don't understand social media well. I have one account, and I follow my grandkids on it, and that's what I do. But there's things out there. We can utilize social media better, because I think we can generate more interest and engage more people than we are right now. And it's not just the bigger givers, but it's other givers as well. And so whether it's like some of the bigger schools are doing, I'd like to look into, for example, subscription-based type of things where people can join and follow and play a part in things, and they're giving $20 a month or whatever it may be. Because then you start pulling the numbers out, and you have 100 people giving $20 a month, that matters. You know, and it's not going out and looking for $20,000, $50,000, $100,000 at a time. It's engaging people at a lower level who ultimately become bigger givers as they become more connected to the program and feel part of this. Because just like your players, just like you want to feel connected to this institution and what we're doing, so do the donors. So they want to feel like they have a connection. And so if they have a way to follow a team closer and like, wow, look what these guys are doing over here, they're going to be more willing and more engaged in being a part of that. So I think there's places that we can take a look at. I mean, over the years, I get it. I mean, I want to be able to bounce things off each other. I want you guys to come and say, hey, what about this? And we'll have the conversation. Too many times over the years, I was met that's just that's not how we do things. It's not a good enough answer for me. I hate that answer. Like, that's just not how we do things. Let's have a conversation first. It may not be how we do things. It may not be, no, this doesn't work, and we start talking about other things, and you know, we were talking to Joseph over there, and he goes, well, here's the reason why this is actually illegal, whatever it might be. I had a conversation with him about something, and he was like, yeah, that's illegal. And I said, okay, well, we're not going to do that. But at least we're kind of processing the ways like how can we better things, and that's just kind of how my mind works. Is how can we do it better, even if we're successful. How can we do it better? Because we're never standing pat. There's no such thing. We're never standing pat. We're either driving forward or we're moving backwards. Because the person next to us is moving forward, right? So there's no such thing as we're never treading off. We're either getting ahead or we're getting behind us. So I think we always have to be constantly asking, how can we do things better? How can we do things better in our program individually? How can we do things better as an athletic program? How can we do things better as an institution? How can we do things and fun and be able to offer the support and everything for any of our student athletes that are involved in whether it's athletics or any other activity or program?
Thanks. One more question, then we're gonna wrap it up.
It's not about money.
So,
You mentioned multiple times about having meaningful conversations. So obviously you're a people guy, get in front, let's talk. Right? In this capacity, it's important that the athletic director are in those meaningful meetings with the VPs and not in a dotted line with the president where I'll bring you in when I need you. Because that's where the meaningful conversations happen, where you can really advocate for us. Because I know that there's been scenarios in the past where because of the structure and our athletic director wasn't in that VP meeting, we weren't able to have a voice. I think whoever that AD is entities have that voice. You see this as an opportunity. You got an interim president, right? So you got that, there's a little window there that if you were selected as that part of this gig is that, and whether it's a title or what, that you have to be in those meetings since your department represents 50% of students here.
No, that's a great question, and actually those questions already started that happened. I mean, you know, as a candidate, I mean, those are types of questions that you're asking, like, what am I gonna have the ability to do, what's my role to do? And so those have been questions with Becky at the table already, with VPs, like where will, you know, because really the AD is a vice president's role.
That's right.
It really is. And so having the ability to be, like you said, at those meetings and be able to report directly to and talk directly to the president without a process. So yeah, those are.
I hope that's not negotiable.
All right, thanks everybody for coming. We sure appreciate your participation. We'll be sending out the feedback forms by the end of the day today. Please submit it by end of day on Monday. So moving forward. Thank you. How was your lunch dessert? Thank you.